Imagine waking up to find your rights gone overnight, democracy suspended, freedom erased. This isn't fiction. It happened in India during the emergency, starting June 25, 1975. For 21 months, the world's largest democracy was silenced. Newspapers censored, opponents jailed, fear replacing freedom. Why revisit this now, nearly 50 years later? Because the emergency is a warning. Democracy is fragile, and history can repeat itself if we forget. Let's journey back to understand how a proud democracy lost its voice and how its people fought to reclaim it. The emergency was declared in India on the night of June 25, 1975, by President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, who signed the proclamation after being advised by the government. This moment marked a turning point in Indian democracy, as the president's signature set in motion a period of unprecedented government control. But the real architect behind this dramatic move was Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She was the driving force, orchestrating the declaration and shaping the events that followed, using her authority to steer the country into a state of emergency. The official reason given to the public and the world was internal disturbances. The government claimed that rising unrest, strikes and protests threatened the stability of the nation, justifying the need for extraordinary measures. But beneath the surface, the real trigger was a dramatic court verdict. Indira Gandhi had just been found guilty of electoral malpractice by the Allahabad High Court, which declared her 1971 election invalid and barred her from holding office for 6 years. Instead of resigning, she invoked Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, which allows for emergency rule in times of grave threat. She cited vague and sweeping threats to national security, using the law to justify her continued hold on power. This move bypassed the usual process of cabinet debate and parliamentary scrutiny, concentrating all authority in her hands. Overnight, the checks and balances of democracy were swept aside, and decision-making became centralized like never before. The public was told that these drastic steps were necessary for their safety and to restore order. State-controlled media broadcast messages of reassurance, urging citizens to trust the government's intentions. But in reality, the emergency was used as a tool to crush political opposition, silence dissent, and overturn the judicial verdict that threatened Indira Gandhi's position. Thousands of activists, journalists, and opposition leaders were jailed without trial. In the end, democracy itself was sacrificed, not to protect the nation, but to safeguard the power and position of a single leader, leaving a lasting scar on India's political history. The emergency didn't come out of nowhere. Economic crisis, inflation, and unemployment fueled public anger. Student protests in Gujarat and Bihar, led by Jayaprakash Narayan, called for a total revolution against corruption. The government clashed with the judiciary, especially after the Supreme Court's basic structure ruling limited Parliament's power. Indira Gandhi's controversial appointment of a loyal Chief Justice deepened mistrust. The final spark, a massive opposition rally in Delhi, where JP urged the police and army to defy illegal orders. That night, democracy was suspended, years of tension erupting into authoritarian rule. June 26, 1975. Indians woke to blank newspapers and government-controlled radio. The free press was dead. Fundamental rights were suspended. Thousands were jailed without trial under MISA. Politicians, students, activists, even ordinary citizens. Fear ruled. People whispered in their homes, terrified of informers. The government boasted of discipline. Trains ran on time, strikes vanished, but it was order enforced by fear. In villages, Sanjay Gandhi's forced sterilization campaign terrorized the poor, with abuses and deaths in squalid camps. The so-called efficiency masked a brutal reality. Liberty and dignity were crushed. The emergency's discipline was the silence of fear, not the peace of progress. Parliament, dominated by Congress, passed sweeping amendments, making emergency declarations unquestionable and shielding the Prime Minister from legal scrutiny. Opposition leaders were arrested en masse. Parties like the RSS were banned. The state's machinery hunted dissenters. Yet, resistance survived underground. Secret pamphlets, clandestine meetings, and support networks kept hope alive. Many resistors faced torture and long imprisonment, but their courage sparked quiet defiance. Some urbanites welcomed the order, but as stories of abuse spread, public anger simmered beneath the surface. The government's iron grip bred resentment, not loyalty. The seeds of resistance were sown in silence, waiting for their moment. The emergency's darkness was pierced by stories of both cruelty and courage. In homes across India, people huddled around radios, anxious for news, as fear and uncertainty gripped the nation. The government's iron grip was felt everywhere, but so too was the quiet determination of ordinary citizens. At Delhi's Turkman Gate, protests against forced demolitions ended in police firing and deaths, symbolizing state brutality. Families lost their homes overnight, and the city's streets echoed with cries for justice. The tragedy at Turkman Gate became a chilling reminder of how power could be misused. Artists weren't spared. Kishore Kumar was banned from the airwaves for refusing to sing for the regime. His silence became a symbol of artistic resistance. Many other creative voices were stifled as censorship tightened its grip on the arts. The satirical film Kissa Kursi Ka was destroyed, its reels burned to ashes. The regime feared the power of satire and criticism and sought to erase dissenting voices from public memory. The judiciary faltered, most infamously in the ADM Jabalpur case, where the Supreme Court ruled that even the right to life could be suspended. This decision shocked many, shaking faith in the very institutions meant to protect citizens. Only Justice H.R. Khanna dissented, standing alone in defense of fundamental rights. His courage became legendary, a beacon of hope in a time of fear. Some newspapers protested by leaving editorials blank, a silent but powerful act. Journalists risked their careers and freedom to make their voices heard, even when words were forbidden. Underground newsletters and whispered defiance kept the spirit of democracy alive. In secret meetings and hidden corners, people shared news and hope, refusing to let fear win. Even in the darkest times, the human spirit found ways to resist. Through small acts of bravery and solidarity, people reminded each other that freedom, once kindled, could never be fully extinguished. In January 1977, in a move that surprised the nation and the world, Indira Gandhi unexpectedly called for general elections. She was confident that her popularity and the control she had maintained during the emergency would guarantee her victory at the polls. Meanwhile, opposition leaders, many of whom had just been released from jail, quickly united under the banner of the Janata Party. They campaigned across the country with a powerful and clear message. This election was not just about politics, but about the very soul of Indian democracy. Democracy versus dictatorship. After 21 months of silence and fear, the Indian public responded with remarkable courage. Voters from all walks of life in cities and villages alike turned out in record numbers, standing in long queues to make their voices heard. The result was historic, a landslide defeat for Indira Gandhi and her Congress party. The people had spoken, choosing freedom over fear. On March 21, 1977, the emergency officially ended. Across the country, there was a sense of relief, hope, and celebration as citizens reclaimed their rights. India's democracy had not only survived a grave threat, but had emerged even stronger and more resilient than before. The new government quickly moved to safeguard the nation's future, passing the 44th Amendment to the Constitution. This amendment made it much harder to declare another emergency and strengthened protections for fundamental rights. The emergency taught India lasting lessons: the importance of a free press, an independent judiciary, and the need for constant vigilance to protect democracy from any threat, no matter how sudden. The story of the emergency remains a powerful warning. Democracy can be lost in a single night, but it can also be reclaimed by the courage and will of the people. Let us remember its lessons, never forget, and never again.